Time's up, princess. Here we go. Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Hey everybody, I'm just going to do some rambling today about Sinners. I don't know how many of you have seen this. If you haven't seen the movie Sinners by Ryan Coogler, then you might not want to watch this. I'm not going to be holding back on any spoilers. I feel like I'm a little late to the party already, seeing as it's been out for a long time. Pretty much everybody I know that already seen it thought it was amazing, so I finally just got around to seeing it, and I actually enjoyed it more on the second time viewing it. And I've had a few conversations with my wife and with some friends about it and what it means and various parts of the movie and what it means. And seeing it a second time, I just felt like I got a better cohesive idea or feeling of what the movie is about. And so I kind of want to go through some of that. I feel like my ideas for what the movie's about have sort of solidified a little bit more, and that maybe you guys would be interested. I'm not sure. So the first thing I want to talk about, and I just want to get out of the way because I really don't want to talk about this very much, is the fact that people are comparing it to From Dusk Till Dawn, and it certainly has a lot of those components, and I love From Dusk Till Dawn, and I think that these are two very different movies for for lots of different reasons, but they're operating and communicating different things. I feel like From Dusk Till Dawn is this pure piece of cinema, just unto itself of cinema. It's just playing with vampire tropes and using, a brilliant storytelling to give you a unique vampire story that you're not normally seeing all the time. Whereas Sinners, I feel like, is operating, it's doing that. It's still as cinematic, but it's not cinema for cinema's sake or for horror movies' sake. There are other levels to it that we're going to go through. But for the people that are interested in, why is it so much like From Dusk Till Dawn, if you didn't notice, obviously we've got the split where if you just watch it from the beginning until halfway through, you wouldn't even know it was going to be a vampire movie, which is the same with From Dusk Till Dawn, and then all of a sudden there's a split in the middle of the movie, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a completely different kind of thing than I thought it was if you didn't know, seeing a trailer or something before you went into the movie. There's also the fact that they're going to a bar out in the middle of nowhere, and From Dusk Till Dawn, it's the Titty Twister, but you get a similar sort of rugged, not a barn vibe from Dusk Till Dawn, but it's a roughneck kind of place. It's not polished, it's not high end, and obviously the vampires are a big part of that. But then there's also stuff like Harvey Keitel asks his children, Juliette Lewis and the boy, I don't remember the actor's name, and says, if I get bitten and I'm going to turn, you have to kill me, you have to promise me, you have to do it, and certainly that happens, and then they have to make that horrible decision. That moment plays out as well in Sinners with Smoke and his lady, whose name I also can't remember. And he has to make that same decision. So there's a lot of the same format or formula that's in From Dusk Till Dawn. But that's not the part that I think is the most interesting. I feel like everyone sees that from a mile away. I kind of thought it was a little frustrating because I'm such a big fan of From Dusk Till Dawn to keep seeing those things. It felt like they were walking in the way of me in this amazing movie, and I kind of wondered if they had followed a different structure but still sold all these other levels in a sort of allegorical sense, which is what I'm about to talk about in a second. I wonder if that might have not strengthened the movie even more for me or for other people, because you wouldn't have this unimportant aspect that we're discussing, because I think that all these other things we're going to talk about really have nothing to do with From Dusk Till Dawn. So what are a few of the other things that I liked about the movie? I thought that it had great, strong female characters. I love that the Asian characters didn't play Asian stereotypes. They didn't have an accent. They fit into that culture, because we're talking about the 1930s, and these people would have been there for a really long time. But if you were to watch movies from the 50s and 60s and 70s, I think that even set in the 1930s, most people would have had them using a strong Asian accent, and it's just nice that we didn't have to do that. I also loved that there were indigenous vampire hunters. I thought that was a great thing. I actually think that the little glimpse we get of them is such a nice teaser. It would be amazing. That's what the sequel or prequel should be, is Ryan Coogler should work to find an indigenous person who is a director and could do a sequel kind of explaining that corner of what they already know, what they've had to deal with. They will have a very similar but different cultural experience with what this movie was about. So I would love to see that. Would be amazing. Put in the comments if you think, because I think that would be such a great idea. One of the other things I wanted to point out, that I think because this movie is playing to me on a sort of metatextual. I don't know if it's a metatextual. It's just it's allegorical. That it's sort of representing something else, because there's this race issue, and that is sort of at the core of what this movie is like. I thought it was interesting that when you first watch the movie and you see the main character Sammy come up to the church and he's covered in blood and he looks like catatonic and he's got the thing which is the guitar neck, but you don't maybe realize, I didn't realize the first viewing that it was a guitar neck. I thought it was like a cudgel or something that he was going to beat someone to death with, and he walks up to his dad and his dad's about to hug him. The whole time I feel it's intentional that you're having trepidation and fear that this guy's going to just freak out and start beating and slaughtering them all, right? Once you watch the whole movie through and you get the context, when you get to that moment, you're like, he came home, he survived, thank God, and it's completely different meaning. And because of what I think this movie is really representing, I found it interesting that that feels to me like a commentary on whiteness watching blackness in sort of an urban setting, right? That like a black kid being tried more as an adult, right, where white kids that are on trial for rape are treated as children, where they're children, we don't want to ruin their future. But if they're black men, then the Central Park Five need to be tried for murder as, you know, men. And so that there is that dichotomy, and I thought that the beginning and the end of the movie really brought that out. I only noticed it on the second viewing, because the first time I was like, what's going on here? This guy looks scary. And then you find out everything at the end, you're like, oh, whew. But I didn't realize until a second viewing that I had that experience going in with the first scene. So I thought that was interesting. Now, the case that I'm making in this video is I'm trying to say that I think that the vampirism is an allegory for colonial capitalist whiteness and commodifying culture. So, how do I explain this? I mean, I think some of it should be pretty obvious, but I think there's sticky points that people might get stuck up and go, well, I don't know about that. So like, I think, for example, the politeness of it, corporate culture being like, oh no, we represent everyone, we're diverse, when really the diversity that they care about is only because they want everyone to shop with them and they don't want to lose money. That's not really at the heart of what fights racism or bigotry, right? That is just opportunistic capitalism. I think that the assimilation is another thing. It's not, they are not representing all the culture and the things that they are assimilating. They are just profiting off of them and throwing the creators aside as if it doesn't really matter. When the vampires bite you, you don't become an individual, you become part of a collective, and your uniqueness is now gone. They all share the same thoughts and all the same memories, so there's no value in their uniqueness. I also think it's interesting that they come after Sammy, right? And they want him. He's the musician. He's the one that when he starts playing, Stack or Smoke, whichever one is riding with him in the car, is like, damn, like his eyes, you see that scene, his eyes light up. Like he knows this kid's got talent. He could go places. He's the real deal, right? But they specifically want him. At some point they say, we'll let you, the rest of you, live if you just let us have the kid. And now, of course, they don't do that. But then also at the end of the movie, there's a scene where old Sammy asks them, the two vampires, and Stack and, is it Mary? And he says, you know, I think that was the best day of my life. What about you? And this guy's been immortal, not aging, right? He's got all these powers that they have. He's sharing this collective consciousness, apparently, that's so great with everybody else. And he was like, the last day I saw the sun, the last day I was with my brother. Yeah, that's the best day of my life too. Meaning that whatever you got from this corporate capitalistic consumption that you bought into this system, it doesn't pay out the way it did before you did that. And it's not just like a, you know, I keep saying whiteness. I'm not necessarily going to have all the right terminology and words, but I think you sort of understand, like, the journey of a lot of musicians is the genuine love of the art. Not just musicians, but like people in general. If you're an artist and you commodify your artwork, there is this sense that you loved something from a genuine place and then you sell it to somebody, and now it's a grind or it's a job or it's devalued or it's watered down, and now it doesn't have the same potency and the same meaning, and you just don't care anymore. That's kind of what I got from that. I made a bunch of notes here, so I'm just going to keep looking down. There's also the montage where they're spinning around the room and he's playing music, and we see the DJ turntables and different people break dancing and rappers and African tribes people dancing as well to the rhythms that they know, creating this lineage. And I think the depth of that is to say that magic, it's to say this is the magic that those vampires are looking for. This is what's so great. This is hope. This is pride. This is culture. This is all these things, and that is specifically what is being attacked. And that showing it through all of history, both in the past when they were taken from Africa, or into the future where, say, you know, rap music gets commodified by white people to be violent gangster rap, right? Like, you lean into that and you push that because drama, and you can make more money, that commodification. Kind of like Drake is the vampire and Kendrick is like the Stack Smoke twins on the inside, right? Fighting for the culture. That's a little broad brushes, but you kind of get what I'm saying. No, I also like this idea that the politeness, right, is a clever way of making the point that, like empathy. You'll notice that there's this part in the movie where the Irish sort of main vampire guy shows up and says, you know, the clan was going to screw you over. They were going to wait till you were all in here. It was going to be a killing floor. They were going to kill you. And they prove that, you know, well, we bit this clan guy, and even your brother says, yeah, it's true, they were all going to kill you, so like, why wouldn't you join us? We'd give you the power. You could go and kill them. Wouldn't that be better? And that very much feels like a devil's bargain, where it's like boss feminism, where you are joining a system and gaining power by it, but you are not depowering or dismantling that system. You're just joining it, and it's becoming stronger now that, say, like a patriarchal, misogynistic environment, right? Now this woman becomes a boss feminist. She becomes the boss. She attains the power. But in order to do so, she has to fit into that corporate structure and retain that same toxic culture, that same misogyny, right? The same way that, oh, well, we're going to get to it here in a second. So yeah, so I really like that. I felt like the empathy that they were playing with the people in the barn, the vampires saying, well, you know, the clan was going to get you, aren't they really bad? Kind of felt like shades of Biden saying, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, right? Sort of like wearing native beads and saying a bunch of pretty words about how you don't like how the system is hurting people, but then as a lawmaker you don't actually legislate better laws. You just use the empty words so you can get votes, and then you don't do anything. That feels like it's weaponizing empathy to get people to care for something that you're actually not going to fix. That feels like what those vampires were doing, right? Like, oh, the clan is so bad, you got to be on our side, right? But literally, like, why are you the better thing? That's what I thought it was. I also thought it was clever the way that the white girl was there, and that the Klansman guy was also assimilated, because you might be thinking like, well, what are you talking about, dude? Like, they're not racism, they're not white supremacy, they're absorbing black people or whatever. They, like, the clan wasn't their friend. They absorbed the clan and turned them into vampires as well. But I think that misses the point that white men are still the victims of patriarchy and misogyny. Because we're participating in this system. It's not helping us to feel these things. It's not helping the manosphere culture to be so woman-hating. That is destructive to them. It is destructive to their personal relationships. It is not going to help them. It's not going to build real empathy or anything like that. So I thought it was very clever for them to really point out, you know, easily, like, we absorb the clan people and we don't even give a shit about them because corporate culture doesn't care about that. You see it now with Donald Trump and all the billionaires that were all like, we're fighting Donald Trump, and then he won the second time and they're all like, we're lining up behind Donald Trump. What do you want? You want to get rid of DEI? We don't really fucking care. But when liberals were in power, they were like, hey, racism's wrong. But you can just see that there's no conscience there. There's no set of standards. It is just the point to make money, to absorb things and acquire things and shit out whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You're just getting power and money. So I felt like that was also very clever of them to use that. And there was a part where I didn't understand the first time, and I'm only kind of putting it together now, but the white people saying, picked poor, I've been clean, right? And I was like, what does that mean? But I think in the context or the lens of viewing the movie this way, I think it's sort of a reference to how even the poorest white man will let you pick his pocket if you can convince him that he's better than the poorest black man. And that is also that sense that white people are not the beneficiary of this white supremacist system of capitalism, because we're seeing what happens now, right? You can't have a slave class of black people because racism is bad. So what do? You just make a slave wage class of poor people, and then it doesn't matter what color you are, you're all the same. But the white people that we're seeing, the farmers that are going bankrupt thanks to Trump's policies and everything, they're still willing to be like, pick my pocket, bro, as long as we get those immigrants out, those brown-skinned people, right? Like, that is the same concept, I think. And so that's where I think picked poor, I've been clean comes from. Let's see now, what's the next thing? I was trying to figure out, the white vampires and their music. So my buddy asked me, what's the deal with that? You know, like, what is their story? What's the thing? And I had a little bit of trouble trying to figure out, like, why are they injecting these dance scenes? They do the sort of river dance. He's got the little, I don't know what you call it. My whiteness is failing me now, but whatever that, it's not clog dancing, but you line sort of dancing things. Very white dance. The music they sang felt very sort of white to me. The guy has an Irish accent, and then I sort of thought, well, maybe that's the key to this, is that if you're looking at the 1930s and the history that comes before that, right, that Irish people would have shared an oppressed culture and history, and that if vampires traditionally come from Europe, right, Eastern Europe, I think that there is something to be said for vampirism in this also being a class war thing, right? You pick on the slaves because they're the poor people. You pick on the Irish because they were the oppressed people. It didn't matter that they were white. You eat the clans people because they're stupid enough to join you to their own detriment, then you're going to take it because, again, it's about acquisition and capitalism. So, yeah, I think that's why they have that history in there, because there's probably a sense that this dude could have been part, that if he's been absorbed, or if he was absorbed by the vampirism and shared his, assimilated all of his culture into there, then maybe that's where that Irish dancing and that music is coming from. He might have been somebody who was working class Irish poor before that, being absorbed, and that's why that's represented. I don't know. Like, my wife at some points was like, you might be reading a little too much into this, and maybe I am. So I'm just sharing my thoughts. Why are they twins? So, in the original From Dusk Till Dawn, they're not twins, they're just brothers, and they obviously have very different personalities. And here, I kind of think that it's intentional to have them be twins because they take, in an allegorical sense, if you think that that Stack was absorbed by this system and he sells out, like he's the rapper that gets, or the blues musician, whatever you want, who gets the record contract even though he knows it's foul, and he's doing, pay-to-play streams or whatever it is to get where he's going. He's watering down his message. He doesn't, that kind of thing. Then I think it's more potent when he talks to his brother and they look the exact same, because I think it illustrates two different people that take two different, like that they can be almost the same person or from the exact same place and have two completely different outlooks. And once somebody is absorbed, if you didn't have a reflection to contrast that with, then it would just be like, yeah, he becomes a vampire and he moves on. But in this way, you're able to better contrast who he was with somebody that loves him so much, that knows who he, I think it just has a better balance like that. I also like that, the twins are kind of villains. I like that they go up to Chicago, that they rip off the Irish mob and they rip off the Italian mob. And I think that also kind of, if you go into the race, the allegorical aspects, or the symbolism of the races, then I think there's also something there to show that there's not a lot of left solidarity or class solidarity if we still are letting cultural divides, like the Irish people were oppressed, Italian people when they came over to America were also treated like black people, because again, capitalism doesn't care, it just needs a ruling class and then it needs a worker class, and black people are in that as well. And we see it all the time with Hispanics and Muslims, that there's so many different communities that united would defeat this, but unfortunately we're kind of all separated. But I also just liked how making the two twins villains contrasts the vampires, which are actually villains. So when you first see them, like Smoke shoots two people in the street, But then you see that he pays for their medical bills, essentially, right? To take care of them, that there are consequences in this culture and that these people are not perfect, but at the same time, they are taking care of their people. Whereas that is not going to be the case with vampires. I don't think any of them they felt pain, which I also thought was interesting, by the way, that all the racists felt the pain if the vampires are racist, right? That one Karen gets caught someplace, and then, or Charlie Kirk gets shot, for example, and all of a sudden all these other people are like, oh, I'm taking this as like, this is me. Where it's like, you don't have to tell on yourself. You don't have to feel a racist person's pain. Why don't you just let that go and go, that's a real bad look for that dude, right? But for some reason, Karens and these types of people end up coming out of the work to take on like the sins of these other people and feel their stupidity. I don't know. I just think that's pretty crazy. Yeah, they also beat the crap out of the guy who cheats at cards. So again, there was like another, like, they're not perfect and they're just human beings. It's not a judgment call as much as it is, there's some things that are just evil and there's some things that are human. And then I thought that the wooden nickel angle was also very interesting. There's this other theme throughout there where they're talking about how 2 months into this and we're going to be flat busted broke. They got a big payday and they thought they had made it, right? They come back down to their people and they go, we're going to give this money to our people, we're going to create something here, we're going to be sustainable with our own community. And I think this is a commentary on how that's not really possible. There's a lot of talk in politics about black capitalism or entrepreneurialism. Again, I'm sorry I don't have all the right words here, but that basically black people could feed into black communities their own money, keep their, have black banks and all the rest of it. But my understanding is that that is not sustainable because black people are such a small portion and they're not already coming to this with a huge amount of wealth. So what they have in the pool is too small to sustain itself as its own isolated community. And so this kind of feeds into this narrative of, Young Thug just came out with an album and he has an AI'd white face on the front, and people asked him, why did you do that? And he said in an interview, because if you want to be number one, you have to be white. And people are taking a lot of offense to this, and I'm not putting a judgment on that one way or another. I think it's a really stupid album cover and a really stupid thing to do, and there's more problems with his album. But I think people might be missing some of the context there. Vanilla Ice, the Beastie Boys, Eminem, these are #1 platinum selling rappers that make it bigger than the black people that created this culture. And so there's something in that to say that, white people, Drake also was kind of, people considered the king, and he's very, very light-skinned as well. Just the industry that promotes Drake and that kind of thing, they love safe music, right? Kendrick in his Beef said, I make music to electrify him, you make music to pacify him. And I think that is also at the heart of this sort of this culture war. And then why is Sammy the main character of the movie? Because I think we all love Michael B. Jordan and the twins. You're gonna have your favorite of the two, but they're badass, they're cool, and so why is it Sammy? Why is the focus on Sammy? And I think that goes to the heart of, because he's the musician, and this is a story of black music. This is the story of the commodifying of black music and the journey that all musicians, I think, that have to interface with this record music industry, with this capitalism, this system that we have that's grinding us all down. We all have to interface with that, but there is such a long through line of black artists being taken advantage of. The amount of people that, at the beginning of the movie, they want to leave their house and go to the city and make records and share their message and share their art and make some money. And so many of them sign deals that they shouldn't, deals with the devil, and end up broke and coming back broken, and drug addictions or whatever, the things that these industries do to grind people up and spit them out, that is there. And so I think that he's the perfect example of that. His father says to him before he goes, like, don't do any of that sinning stuff, like, these are the warnings that parents would worry about their kids entering a similar situation, right? Where it's like, you're going to sign this record deal, they're going to give you a bunch of money and advances up front, and then they're going to take it all afterwards, and you're going to end up broken poor like so many do. The Clips album just had that line in it where one of them says, some signs checks I know better than, right? Well, you weren't supposed to do that. That the theme in the movie is that there's no real freedom up north either. Smoke or Stack, I forget which one it is, he says, It's just tall buildings instead of plantations, right? And so when the system gives you absolutely nowhere that you can go, they even tried to cheat the system and steal a bunch of money and then, build this bar and build this community, that even that wasn't going to be sustainable. The system had so many other people on wooden nickels and credit slips or whatever, those, non-fungible plantation tokens or whatever they were, that wasn't going to allow them to sustain. It was a system that was built to corrupt them. And then you've got this vampirism, which is like a record deal that feels like a way out, that you can take that and find a way out, and in the end it's not, because it's just another poison pill that's bringing you back down. And so yeah, I don't know. Let me know, guys. Sorry, there's a bit of a ramble here, but that's what we're here for, ramblings. Let me know. Did you guys see the movie? Did you like the movie? Hopefully you saw it, because otherwise I just ruined a whole bunch of it. Do you think I'm way off base with all of this stuff, or do you think that this is all intentional? The more I feel like I'm peeling back the layers of the onion on each one of these ideas, the more it informs what the other parts of the movie are about, if you follow that thread of logic. Anyway, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time.